Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty crucial in our digital lives
Yeah.
these days. We're going to be looking at some recent reports and claims about, well, potential censorship
Mm.
and maybe even like a little push, for certain political content
Right.
on those big social media platforms everybody uses, specifically Instagram and TikTok.
Oh, yeah. Those are the big ones these days.
Yeah. And we've got some pretty interesting stuff to work with here, excerpts from this
Hmm.
Ring of Fire YouTube video transcript.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen those guys.
Yeah. So our mission, if you will, is to really dig into what these reports are saying. Like, what are they actually alleging is going on?
Right.
How have the platforms responded? And then what does all this mean for,
Mm.
how we see information online?
Right.
In general?
Right.
The core of it seems to be that content leaning, one way, politically left, was being I guess suppressed is the word, or hidden,
Yeah.
and content leaning the other way, right, might have been getting more visibility.
Yeah. So this is raising some pretty fundamental questions, right, about how neutral these digital spaces really are.
Right.
Where we all spend so much time, where we get so much of our information.
Exactly.
And I think the source you've brought in does a good job of jumping right into the details. So maybe we should start with Instagram.
Okay, yeah, Instagram. So the source mentions this BBC report. Apparently, users who were searching for hashtags, like hashtag Democrat or hashtag Democrats,
Yeah.
were getting zero, absolutely no results,
Wow.
which is hard to imagine,
Yes.
right? Like you search for something that common and you get nothing.
Yeah.
The contrast is what really gets you, though.
Mm.
That same report said searching for hashtag Republican brought back like 3.3 million posts.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
It's huge.
Yeah. Definitely seems like there's something strange going on there in terms of, how those terms were being handled by the platform.
Yeah, and it wasn't just hashtags. Like if you actually type the word Democrats into the Instagram search bar,
Manually.
manually,
Mm-hmm.
users were getting this message that,
Mhm.
maybe the results have sensitive content and they're hidden from view,
That's interesting. So they're flagging it.
flagging it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the source really points out that there were also
Okay.
fewer results, apparently, if you search for Republicans,
Okay.
plural,
Uh-huh.
compared to, Republican, just singular.
Interesting. So even like a small change
Yeah.
in the wording.
Yeah, small change. Big
Yeah.
difference, right? Versus the, complete absence of results for the left-leaning terms.
Right, right. So what's really fascinating here is how the source breaks this down.
Right.
They don't buy the idea that this was just some technical, glitch. And they ask, how could a glitch so perfectly pick on terms that are connected to, one
Right.
side of the political spectrum?
Right.
I mean, look, glitches happen,
Oh, yeah.
but a pattern like this, it definitely makes you wonder, right, what's really going on
They got
under
me.
the hood?
Yeah. That selectivity does seem kind of pointed, right? Okay, so let's move on to TikTok.
Yeah.
The source talks about these reports that if you searched for content that was, anti-Trump,
Okay.
you just get that no results found message.
Yeah.
And apparently the app would even tell you that those phrases might, violate the app's guidelines.
So this is less of like an error and more of like an active
Yeah.
content policy being
Yeah.
enforced.
Yeah.
That's quite different.
And to really drive this point home, the source shares this anecdote from X, formerly Twitter,
Okay. Yeah.
where this user did a little experiment. They searched for Donald Trump rigged election
Okay.
on a U.S. account,
Uh-huh.
and then they did the same search on a U.K. account.
Okay. So same search, different
Same search, different location,
institution.
and the U.S. account. Results were blocked.
Wow.
UK account. Results showed up.
So that suggests it's not just a random thing,
Yeah.
right? It's like specific to a certain
It's targeted,
yeah.
yeah. And it's hard to explain that away with, oh, it's just,
Yeah, glitch.
a glitch, yeah. The source also notes that sometimes if you, misspelled the search terms on purpose,
Oh, interesting.
related to this supposedly blocked content, results would actually show up.
Oh, wow. So
That's like the filter was looking for.
it's targeting specific keywords
Yeah,
rather than, having a problem with the search function as a whole.
exactly.
I mean, that kind of inconsistency
Yeah,
really makes you think, right?
right.
And then they give that example of
Yeah.
fuck Biden
Okay.
supposedly being allowed, while fuck Trump was allegedly blocked. That raises questions about how consistently those moderation rules were being applied.
It does, yeah. And it goes beyond just Instagram and TikTok, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the source brings up Facebook. This one's kind of wild. Some users who had previously followed Joe Biden
Okay.
were suddenly also following Donald J. Trump and
Oh,
JD Vance's pages.
that's strange.
Yeah, without ever, actually choosing to do so.
So this isn't just, content being absent. This is like potentially
obvious.
messing with
Yeah.
user connection.
If that's true, that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, right? Like
Yeah.
it makes you question the whole, integrity of the platform and
Yeah.
how much control users actually have.
Right, right. So far, we've got these allegations popping up across 3
Three big platforms.
major social media platforms.
Yeah.
So what did Instagram and TikTok say about all this?
I'm curious.
Well, according to the source, both of them claimed that these were all unintentional.
Oh, so just
There's-
oops.
Moments,
Makes sense.
accidents, technical glitches,
Okay.
just stuff happens.
So how does the source react to that?
So that's where the source gets pretty skeptical.
Okay.
They point out that
Yeah.
these supposed incidents all seem to happen around the same time as some meetings between the
Actually-
owners of these platforms and Donald Trump.
Okay. So they're drawing a connection there.
Yeah, they're not shying away from it at all.
So even though we don't have, concrete proof
No.
that these things are directly linked,
Right.
it's definitely hard to ignore that timing.
Right. The source pretty much says, and I quote, "It sure as hell seems intentional."
Wow. Okay. So they're not holding back.
No. So, it's hard to completely ignore that potential connection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like even if there's not a, smoking gun,
Right?
it definitely makes you think about, what influence these high-level meetings might have had.
Right.
And it's interesting how the source then immediately shifts gears and starts talking about the First Amendment.
Yeah, this is a really important point.
Yeah.
The source makes it very clear that these platforms, because they are private companies, not the government,
Right.
they generally have the right
Yeah.
to decide what content they allow on their services.
Yeah, that's a big distinction.
Huge. Yeah.
The First Amendment in the U.S. is really about the government not being able to censor speech, right?
Right.
Private companies like these social media platforms,
Right.
they have a lot more leeway in deciding what they host.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can still get criticized.
Of course.
And their decisions can have big impacts on society. But
Of course.
legally, it's a totally different situation.
Right. Right. And this leads right into the source's critique of what they call free speech warriors.
Okay.
They specifically call out conservatives who have, been really loud in the past about, so-called censorship on these platforms.
Right. Yeah.
But they're asking, where are all those people now? Why aren't they speaking up about this?
Interesting.
Where's the outrage if liberal content is being suppressed?
It's like they're accusing them of like a double standard.
A double standard, yeah.
Yeah.
The source is basically saying,
Yeah.
their concern about censorship seems to depend on who's being censored.
Yeah, it makes you think about how consistent
Right.
those calls for free speech really are.
Yeah.
Is it about, free speech in general, or is it more about, wanting their side to have a louder voice?
Right.
That's a really good point.
And the source, is very clear that their position is consistent.
Okay.
They may not like what was happening,
Yeah.
but they understand the platforms have the right to do it.
Right.
It's the double standard that they're calling out.
Hypocrisy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a tension you see everywhere online, right?
Yeah.
People want, total freedom of expression,
Right.
but these platforms also have to, manage their content.
Right.
It's a tough balance.
Yeah. So let's try to, put all this together. What have we learned from this deep dive into this source material? I mean, we looked at claims that Instagram and TikTok were supposedly suppressing content from the left and boosting content from the right.
Right.
We also talked about that Facebook claim where users were, being connected to certain conservative figures without their consent.
Yeah. That was a weird one.
Yeah. And the platforms themselves said it was all just unintentional, just glitches, oops moments.
Yeah, just mistakes.
But our source, they're pretty skeptical of that.
They don't seem to buy it.
No, especially given the timing of those, meetings with a certain political figure.
Right, right. And we talked about how all the,
Yeah.
it might be concerning, but it doesn't necessarily violate the First Amendment. Right.
Because these are private companies.
Right.
And then that led into, the source's critique of those who complain about censorship sometimes, but not other times.
Right. Only when it benefits them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So it's a lot to unpack,
It is.
Makes you think.
It does. It really does.
So as you're thinking about all this, consider this. Knowing about these allegations and how the platforms responded, how does that change how you look at the content you see on these platforms?
Right.
What does all this tell us about how much power these algorithms have in deciding what we see and what we don't see?
Yeah.
It's a complex world out there.
It really is.
And it's changing all the time. Staying engaged, thinking critically about the information you're consuming, that's more important now than ever.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.